Welcome aboard the Story Ark. Today I give you the third and final part of the Story Ark presents American Demigods. Or should I say, Demigoddesses. This is a collaboration with students from Brigham Young University where we will be diving into the American Demigods, folk heroes and tall tale characters that ride the line between human and divine in a uniquely American way. And today we're talking about Calamity Jane and Annie Oakley. Let's talk about Calamity Jane, also known as the heroine of Whoop Up. This made me laugh. I have the humor of a 12-year-old boy. But like many of our American demigods, the legend of Calamity Jane was based on a real-life person whose name was, you guessed it, Martha Canary. Just kidding, her middle name was Jane. It's said that she got the name Calamity because people said that any man who wanted to date her would end up, well, courting Calamity. Unlike many of our previous stories, you might be most familiar with Calamity Jane from her real life or published work rather than her tall tales. Jane became a popular character in dime novels. I will not be naming the series because it sounds quite rude. She kind of became the feminine face of the stereotypical Wild West when it came to popular culture, which is super interesting because that gave her stories more reach than the organic face-to-face spread of traditional folklore. Her stories were part of an export that defined the Western genre, and these were some pretty spectacular stories. Jane herself encouraged the exaggeration and romanticization of her adventures, even playing into the most popular when she wrote her autobiography.
There were all sorts of crazy horse races run in the West, one of the craziest being proposed and won by Calamity Jane herself. She was sitting in front of a saloon beside her horse named Jim, when a stranger rode up and invited her to trade horses. He was willing, he said, to prove that his horse could outrun hers under any conditions, for money, marbles, or whiskey. She said the idea of a race sort of appealed to her and inquired if she might name the distance and conditions. The stranger said he was willing, and each of them put $100 in the hands of a stakeholder. Winner takes all. Calamity Jane then had a notary write down the terms of the race, and it was signed and witnessed by two passing gamblers. The terms she dictated were as follows. We'll start 20 feet back of the platform where the horses are now standing, jump the horses up on the platform right into the saloon, take a drink right out through the back door, enter the next saloon by the back door, have a drink there and out the front, enter the next saloon, and so on all the way down the street until all 11 saloons and dance halls on the side of the street are visited in turn. The first horse at the bar of the last saloon gets the money. Her horse had been trained to do this stunt and had done it for years, and when he got to a bar, he could even take a bottle in his teeth, upend it, and drink just like a man. And with about the same physical consequences, Calamity Jane won the race by 3 saloons and 4 drinks.
There are plenty of iterations of this story, but the majority of them start with this random dude approaching Calamity Jane and proposing the race. I suspect this framing is what makes it acceptable for Jane to thoroughly outwit the man with a pre-prepared scheme, which is sometimes different, but always involves Jane having some knowledge or skill the foolish stranger doesn't believe she can possess. The novelty arises from Jane's stories because of her brazen refusal to follow social norms, like drinking heavily even though she was a woman. She wore pants and didn't even try to fit in with the other women. Her chief novelty was that, biological sex aside, she was almost entirely masculine. She could do anything a man could, and sometimes she could do it even better because she was smart about it. In contrast, it's a significant point in the story of Annie Oakley that she held on to her own femininity. Her dresses and hair ribbons were part of the draw to her shooting shows, where she became known as Little Sure Shot. Calamity Jane and Annie Oakley do have some similarities though, like being more well known for their middle names than their given ones, and being more popular in modern pop culture adaptations.
Flags were whipping in the crisp and cold November air when little Annie Moses arrived for a shooting match with the professional Frank Butler. There stood a ruddy man, big blue-eyed, smiling with a shotgun cradled in his arm. He wore a belted hunting coat and a soft green hat with a jutting feather. Mr. Frank Butler, your challenger, Miss Annie Moses. The marksman stared at her. This girl. I thought you said, I said. There was a crack shot from up country. Here she is. This time his smile was for her. A smile of interest and surprise, of warm and friendly pleasure. She had never seen a man so handsome. He lifted his feathered hat. It's a pleasure, Miss Moses. Annie bobbed her head. Same here, she managed. Together they went to the shooting station, and Annie was offered her choice of guns from a rack. She lifted a polished gun, balanced it, and glanced along the barrel. "All right," she said. Frank Butler won the toss and took his position. "Pull," he said. The bird sailed out, and the gun swung to his shoulder. "Dead," cried the referee. As Annie took her station, she felt lost. A strange place, a strange crowd, a strange gun, a strange man smiling at her. She had never shot clay targets from a mechanical trap. She had never seen a shooting range like this. The gun began shaking in her hand. She brought it to her shoulder, then she lowered it to her waist, and still her hands trembled. The gallery was dead silent as she waited. She tried to think of the target, but her mind was full of the silent men behind her and the money that hung on her shooting. She wanted to put the gun down, to go home to Dark County. If she were in the woods watching a covey of quail burst up, then she remembered how it went. She had told herself many times, and now she told herself again, "You don't sight them, you just swing with them, and when it feels right, pull." Quail were swifter than clay targets. When it feels right. She forgot all but the gun in her hands, and the trap where the clay bird would rise. The wind whipped her skirt and tugged at the ribbon on her hair. She stood lightly balanced, her eyes waiting. Pull! When the bird arced up, the gun rose with a single motion to her shoulder. Her cheek pressed the gun stock, her eyes caught the sailing target, her fingers pressed. "Dead," cried the referee. They were two experts, the big smiling man and the grave small girl, both shooting with instinctive skill. Pull. Dead. Pull. Dead. Pull. Dead. The call went on unchanging until the last shot of the 25. "Pull," called Frank Butler. The target came up steeply and quartering to the right. It was an instant longer before the gun sounded. The target sailed on the sunlight. "Miss," the referee cried. Annie balanced herself ready to swing from the waist, holding the gun lightly. "Pull!" Up came the barrel, her cheek snuggled to the wood. In an instant, she corrected for the target's flight. While the gun was swinging, her finger pressed. All her life, she remembered the view from Shooter's Hill, wide-spreading and distant, full of light and color, with the far hills hazy in the sun, and all her life she remembered the referee's high-pitched cry. A year later, she was Frank Butler's wife. 2 years later, she was his partner on stage. 6 years later, she was a shooting star, and Frank Butler was her manager. 11 years later, she was followed by crowds through the streets of London. She never stopped wondering that it all began with the cry of dead and the smell of gun smoke on the autumn wind.
This retelling is very cinematic in its storytelling, but I think it's particularly interesting in how it demonstrates that Annie Oakley held on to her feminine qualities. The pivotal moment when she gets over her nerves and demonstrates her natural abilities focuses on how alienated she feels from the men around her, the masculine space, and makes a particular note of how her skirts and hair ribbons interact with the environment. She's shy, polite, and demure, and despite this being her origin story, she says a total of 4 words out loud. This is a consistent point in her real-life character. She was said to be quiet but self-assured, that other adaptations often brush over in favor of a brash, wild personality. Like with Calamity Jane, the novelty of the story of Annie Oakley isn't that she's a supernaturally good shooter, it's that she excels at something masculine. Like Annie says to Frank Butler in the 1950s film Annie Get Your Gun, "Anything you can do, I can do better." And I heard that one a lot. But that is a double-edged sword for the folkloric character of Annie Oakley. Sometimes she can do things better than a man can, but she can still only do what a man can. For the male heroes we've covered in this podcast, each of them were remembered and celebrated because they had gifts beyond human abilities. It seems like Jane and Annie are remembered because they had gifts beyond what was considered female abilities. Heroes like Paul Bunyan and Pecos Bill are entirely supernatural, figments of a collective imagination. The characters of John Henry and Johnny Appleseed have almost completely transcended their mortal origins. There are a dozen other male heroes in tall tales that we could talk about, who have overcome their humanity in one way or another. So why don't we tell as many stories of Wild West women touching the divine? No, I did not plan out these episodes to have this theme, but dang does it work. This structure seems to imply that the tier above man is demigod, but the tier above woman is man. There is something to be said about the context in which these stories were created and spread, about the people who told them and the people who listened to them. But the question remains, if these stories are inherently misogynistic, why are we still telling them? In the last 5 years, there has been a Calamity Jane YA novel, a movie, and a revival of an opera. Annie Oakley, besides being a popular picture book figure, is getting another biopic in the next year. I think the answer circles us back to all the themes we've been talking about: overcoming nature, community, and hard work. The reason these stories stay with us even after the environments they were born in are long gone is because they speak to something innately human. Just as the stories of Pecos Bill and Paul Bunyan reveal a deep desire to control nature, maybe Calamity Jane's story reveals the desire to control the body, our natural state of being. Like John Henry and Johnny Appleseed became heroes for their good deeds, maybe Annie Oakley is remembered because she showed that women could do masculine things without giving up their femininity. And they didn't need supernatural powers to do any of that. Maybe the same reasons we exaggerate the stories of men are the same reasons we keep women's stories realistic. Maybe breaking the glass ceiling was miracle enough. The Story Ark is a production of Food for Thought Audio. The Story Ark is hosted by Kenny Mears. This episode was produced in association with students from Brigham Young University. A huge thanks to everyone who contributes to this episode. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts for more content. And as always, thanks for your comments. We read them all, and thanks for listening.